Okay, Committee Chair Lear, would you be willing to move forward with the Law and Licensing Committee report?
I am so ready and so willing. So this would be the report on the Law and Licensing Committee for June 5th, 2020. And the first item would be 11.2. And this was a discussion with Utah State, who's going to be a new authorizer, and a discussion of the authorizing processes that the university has developed. We've had several conversations with the individuals involved, and there will be a little more discussion of this with the individuals from Utah State tomorrow. But even with that additional discussion, the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve the Utah State University remediation process. Sorry, I've got two motions here. First, the committee moves that the board approve the Utah State University authorization process for approving new charter school applications.
Thank you. The motion for the board is that the board approve the Utah State University authorization process for approving new charter school applications. Is there discussion to that motion? Board Member Earl?
Actually, I have just a point of order. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
My question is, how close do we need to stick to our agenda? How far ahead can we get without running into problems with the general public listening in? I'm just wondering, just if people are wanting to, do you know what I mean? We're at 12, we're going to the 12:30 item. I'm just asking a general concern that if there's public wanting to attend in some way and we're an hour or so ahead, does that create problems?
None of these items were time specific, nor is there public comment on any of these items. So I think we're okay. Lorraine, if you want to speak to that question.
I would defer to that. The times are always approximate. And as you can see, with many times we change different items to different times on the agenda, depending on sometimes staff who can be there to speak to things. So we try as much as possible to stick to the agenda, but no matter what we move, something's going to be out of order.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to kind of check on that. And not that I love that we're ahead. I'm not questioning that. It's just if people are wanting to, listen in. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Earl. Okay. So we have a motion before us, which is that the board approve the Utah State University authorization process for approving new charter school applications. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see no hands. Please, Board Member Cindy Davis.
Yeah, I really appreciate Utah State University. I think they've worked well with us in this process, and I think they've got some good things going. I will just express a little bit of a concern that I have expressed, that what appears to some as a conflict of interest when in the remediation process, there is an option for the school that is struggling to choose USU as the authorizer to pay them to contract with them to help them to become better so that they are no longer in jeopardy of losing their school. And then the other conflict of interest that I see is that in some of the documentation, it has been said that these schools will be an opportunity for student interns, teachers. I think that one can be mitigated, hopefully by limiting the number of interns in a school, similar to the way that many schools limit the number of interns. I don't know if you could hear me. I think someone else's mic is on, but I just want to express that publicly, and that I think we should move forward, but I do hope that those things are being mitigated. Thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Davis. Okay. Seeing no further comment, the motion before us is that the board approve the Utah State University authorization process for approving new charter school applications. Please vote. Board Member Belknap. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, Chair Lear, next motion.
Another motion on the table. And this is the one that the committee will have more discussion about tomorrow. This is the remediation process that is also presented. And the concern that will be discussed is simply for Davis just discussed the potential conflict of interest of a authorizer who also provides the remediation. That seems a little circular and concerning, and I agree with Board Member Davis. And that will be our discussion with the proposed authorizer tomorrow, but even yet, the committee moves that the board approve the Utah State University remediation process.
The motion before the board is that the board approve the State University remediation process, recognizing that that conversation will continue tomorrow in committee. Okay, is there any discussion to that motion? Okay, seeing none, please vote. Board Member Newell. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, it's item 11.3. This was a discussion of a change of a date for the Carson Smith Scholarship Funding and Procedures, R277602. The motion for the board, and there was a split vote from the committee on this, was a 3-2 vote, with Member Davis and myself not in favor of changing this date as outlined, but it did pass the committee. So the committee moves that the board continue and approve R277-602 Carson Smith Scholarships Funding and Procedures Draft 1 on second and final reading.
The motion before the board is that the board continue and approve R277-602 Carson Smith Scholarships Funding and Procedures Draft 1 on second and final reading. Discussion to that motion. Board Member Cannon. Board Member Cannon.
Thank you. I was waiting to be unmuted. I wonder if Board Member Davis and Board Member Lear would just give us a little more in-depth information in terms of why they felt to oppose this item.
And I'll defer to Board Member Davis if Cindy would like to speak.
Is that acceptable, Chair?
Yes, Board Member Davis, go ahead.
I voted no on this because when I was a principal, I always asked our parents to please, if at all possible, make a decision by the end of March as to where their students would be attending in the fall. Because hiring season is not in July. Hiring season is in the spring. And so in order to budget, and I always used to sit in my school and think, why doesn't someone at an overarching state level help communicate this to parents to make these decisions as we get more and more choices in education to try to make that decision in March instead of late in the day. So I didn't necessarily speak against it in committee, but as a matter of knowing what people deal with on the ground level. And quite honestly, I believe Deputy Superintendent Angie Stallings can speak for herself, but I think she talked to superintendents and they felt like, and charter directors, that they could live with this change. And our staff requested the change because it helped make some things easier, I think, on our end. So that's why I didn't speak against it in committee, but just out of personal wishes for the last decade, I will be voting no.
Okay. Board Member Hanson?
Just wondered if we could hear from Board Member Lear as well as to her reasoning.
Okay, Board Member Lear, did you want to speak to that?
It was as simple as that.
I'm sorry, you cut out. Can you repeat that?
Yes, I agreed with Board Member Davis. I think an earlier deadline is appropriate, especially, it's even more appropriate in this current era of teacher instability and school processing, that teachers know how many students they're going to have to deal with. And I think that deadline of a couple of months means a lot to schools, and and parents should be, I think, very should be more aware of that.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other hands for questions on this motion. So the motion before the board is the board continue and approve R277602 Carson Smith Scholarships Funding and Procedures Draft 1 on second and final reading. Please vote. Okay, assuming that Board Member Marsh and Board Member Lear are both no's, if I'm correct.
Yes, and it's
Okay.
yes,
A
and
no. Okay, Board Member Marsh, you're a no.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. This motion does not pass. Please don't take your votes off yet. The ayes are Board Member Cummins, Board Member Newell, Board Member Earl, Board Member Thorpe, Board Member Belknap, and Board Member Bolter. The noes are Board Member Hanson, Gravitt, Lear, Cannon, Davis, Haynes, Marsh. I'm guessing, Angie, if you want to speak to this, that this will go back to committee if it doesn't pass. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The only change in the rule, I believe, was the date change. So if the board opposes the date change as staff recommended, I guess I wonder if we should take it back to committee and talk about it more, or if this is just means staff should leave the date alone for this year.
Okay. Because this was a motion to continue as well. So does it need a motion to continue?
Yes, let's go. Yes,
Oh,
if you could do the
fine.
motion to continue, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Lear, would you be willing to make that motion?
Sure. The committee moves that the board continue R277-602 Carson Smith Scholarships Funding and Procedures Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Okay, so we wouldn't include draft 1 on that. It would just be to continue. Okay.
Right.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. The motion before the board is to continue R277-602 Carson Smith Scholarships Funding and Procedures on second and final reading. Is there any discussion to that motion? Board Member Belknap?
Yes, I just want clarity that this is not a committee motion.
Correct. That was a motion from Board Member Lear and second by Board Member Marsh.
Thank you.
Well, the committee did vote to continue in its 3-2 vote. That was part of that 3-2 vote also previously.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, please vote. Board member, okay, Board member Marsh, are you a no? Just to confirm.
Sorry, my internet's having glitches today, getting back
Okay.
on. I am a yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
The next item is, are you ready?
Yes, please.
Item 11.4, R277-100, definitions for Utah State Board of Education rules, amendment and continuation. And I have an amendment, but I suppose I should make the motion first, right? Is that right?
Yes, please.
Brittany?
Yes.
Okay, the committee moves that the board, the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board continue R277-100. For Utah State Board of Education rules on second and final reading, but that doesn't say,
I believe that should be draft 2.
draft 2. It doesn't say that, and it doesn't say amend and
Approve.
continue either. So the motion would be to amend and continue draft 2, R277-100, definitions for Utah State Board of Education rules on second and final reading.
Okay, so the motion for the board is that the board approve and continue R277-100, definitions for Utah State Board of Education rules draft 2 on second and final reading. Is there any discussion to that motion?
Vice Chair Cummins, may I speak?
Yes, please.
Board members, the motion is actually correct as is. If you'll recall, we do need to continue this rule. However, the amendments, we could not come to agreement in committee in June. And so R277-100 is actually on the Law and Licensing Committee agenda for tomorrow for the amendments. So at this time, we're only asking for a continuation. We'll be reviewing the draft again tomorrow in Law and Licensing.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Angie.
Yes. Can I try that again?
Yes, please.
Okay. The motion really, the real motion is that the committee moves that the board continue R277-100, definitions for Utah State Board of Education rules on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board continue R277-100, definitions for Utah State Board of Education rules on second and final reading. Is there any discussion to that motion? Okay, I see none, so please vote. That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Now I don't have to make my motion either. So the next item is 11.5, R277-418, distant blended online or competency-based learning program, and this is a repeal. The motion moved, or the committee moves that the board repeal R277-418, distance blended online or competency-based learning program on second and final reading.
The motion for the board is that the board repeal R277-418, distance blended online or competency-based learning program on second and final reading. Any discussion to that motion? I see none. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously.
Next item is item 11.6, R277-488, dual language immersion program. This is an amendment. The motion for the board was that had some minor updates to the application process and a deadline. So the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-488 Dual Language Immersion Program Draft 1 on second and final reading.
The motion for the board is the board approve R277-488 Dual Language Immersion Program Draft 1 on second and final reading. Any discussion to the motion? Board Member Marsh? Nope. Okay. Seeing no discussion, please vote. Board Member Earl? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
The next item is item 11.7, R277-310, International Guest Teachers. It's a new rule having to do with, obviously, international guest teachers. And it now combines it with the other licensing rules. So the motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve R277-310, International Guest Teachers, Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve R277-310 International Guest Teachers Draft 1 on second and final reading. Discussion to the motion. Board Member Belknap.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I just have a question on what kind of discussion, was there any discussion on the problem of getting the visas now coming into our country and/or number, not that we can solve that, just interested. And number two, what's the difference in us using reciprocity internationally versus reciprocity across the states?
I can speak to the first question, but I could only guess at the second. There was no discussion of the first point that you raised.
Thank you.
Somebody else can
Is there-
speak to the rest of the discussion, I guess.
Okay, Malia Height, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Perfect. As far as the reciprocity goes with international licenses, this is part of a program that is associated with our dual language immersion, where we have signed a memorandum of understanding with participating countries. So we acknowledge and have already vetted their preparation requirements as well as background checks, which are very rigorous. And so because we vetted those specific countries, then we have acknowledged through this MOU that we have reciprocity with the other countries. When we're looking at states and reciprocity within states, we don't have any such memorandum of understanding, nor are the standards for licensure the same state by state. Each state has their own set of standards, and is often the case, Utah's standards for educators requires a few more things than some other states. So we look at those in applications individually.
Chair, follow up?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Malia, when it comes to this, you're talking about international guests. Does this also include international guests that teach, not necessarily in the dual language immersion? What about our international guests who teach and have just come from another country?
So if they, thank you for the question, Board Member Belknap. If they are a teacher who wishes to teach not as part of the dual language immersion, then they must submit all of their documentation, transcripts from their, whatever their international country is. And it has to go through a third-party transcription and translation. So that oftentimes they're not in English. And so we need to get those translated into English. And the third party will also verify what degree in that country is equivalent to in the US. So we'll get their transcripts, and then they will say that we've reviewed the transcript and it's equivalent to a bachelor's degree or it's equivalent to a master's degree. And so we look at those individuals the same as we would an out-of-state applicant.
Okay, thank you. But Malia, I just can't understand why you don't know all languages. All right, thank you, Chair Cummins.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is that the board approve R277310 International Guest Teachers Draft 1 on second and final reading. Please vote. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And the last item on our agenda was item 11.9, which was the discussion of the new and improved special education rules that will be continued tomorrow. It's not an action item, but we had a very excellent discussion, and thanks to all who participated.
Okay, thank you. Does that complete your report?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that takes us to the end of law and licensing. It's now noon, so we'll go ahead and break for lunch for 30 minutes. We'll come back at 12:30 and move to the standards and assessment.